but simply to kind of easefully listen, even to listen to the breeze outside, or the sound of the waves, or children playing, or just easily listening to your own breath, It's a kind of contemplation. It brings you into a kind of inner solitude. And there's a great kind of ease with it. And also, when we get more accustomed to it, we're not resisting it so much, we stop fidgeting with it, then we start to feel, kinesthetically, you feel in the body, in the mind, in the heart, in the soul, you sort of feel enriched by it, you feel renewed by it. Just through something as simple as that, you can feel it, And so this level of emptiness, you might say, this kind of contemplative loafing, is really the foundation of almost every kind of contemplative practice that there ever was. This is kind of at the heart of it all, being able to be still. This is the heart of prayer as well. Prayer begins with the capacity to listen. If our prayer is just what we're demanding from God, then we're not really praying. We're in an exchange or something. We're trying to make a deal. So when one prays, one has to start with a kind of listening, a kind of openness. And as many of the mystics know that went along that kind of path, the Christian path, and other paths where prayer is a very rich part of the path, that many of the contemplatives came to see that, that at many times when they sat down to pray, that when they came into a state of listening, their state of listening itself might have become the prayer itself, so they didn't find it even necessary to speak words at that point. That the listening itself was the prayer. As they said in the Christian mystics called it the prayer of quiet. There's something also about, I think, our sort of mentality of the West as well, where it's not something that we don't learn to trust the universe. Or you could say, religiously speaking, we don't necessarily learn to trust God. We don't learn to trust life. That's not something that's emphasized much, is it? We're taught how to get one over on life. How to succeed, how to conquer, how to break it up into its bits and reassemble it, and all the sort of technical things that we can do with life, that we can accomplish through using life. But it's not part of our heritage, at least not our recent heritage, where we're really taught to have a kind of trust, that there is a kind of wisdom, a kind of sacredness that is inherent within the structure of life itself. And therefore we could actually listen to it, rather than always be trying to do something with it. I think this is an underappreciated weakness of our given culture, the profound distrust that our culture has, that many of us grow up with, just about life. The mistrust, in other words, that if I become for a moment contemplative, if I become, as Walt Whitman would say, if I just loaf for a while, that if I was just to do that, if I was just to come into a state of deep listening, it's not part of our cultural heritage. It says, yes, and then something very profound might happen, that you might connect with something very wise or very loving or very sacred. Of course, there are those voices in our culture from the past that have been that. Of course, the monastic part of Western culture has suggested that to us, but in our modern culture, that's not something. I think we more grow up with a sort of anxiety about life. And so these even the beginnings of a type of emptiness, this sort of receptivity and listening is something that's runs a little counter to many people's, certainly their conditioning. Maybe even almost it's counterintuitive to them, at least initially. In a way, in a certain sense, to listen deeply is itself an act of faith. To listen in quietness is an act of faith, you know. The faith is that there's something valuable in that quietness. There's something valuable in the listening. There's something valuable there that I can't grasp, that I cannot control, that I cannot manipulate, but there's something there that's valuable, that's profound.